Hi everyone, welcome to the Listen for a Change Instagram channel. Today, my name is Martin. Actually, every day my name is Martin, but my name is Martin, and I will be hosting a Instagram Live, Listen Live conversation with my dear friend Pendle Faith Marshall-Hall, who is a climate activist at Amazon Watch. We're very excited to have her join today. She's mainly going to talk about how this current crisis that we're in has impacted the climate movement and the environmental movement at this time, internationally in the United States. Thanks for joining. Hi, Ty. Hey, Kindle, Classroom, and Pumpkin Love. Also, I see that Pendle joined too, so she'll be joining us on this live shortly. Hi, Tallybird. Oh, that's my mother. Hello. Very excited to have you here. Um, and yeah, so we're going to get started soon. As soon as Pendle's joining. Okay, she's going to join. She's going to join now. Get ready. Get excited. It's happening. Here we go. We're waiting. Anyways, while we wait, oh,
Hi.
hello! You're here. I'm so glad you made it. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to do this.
Yeah, I like it. I like your little setup, the books and the plant, and it's very nice.
It's very intellectual.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's good. I've got my half-made bed behind me. Just what the things you have to do while shelter in place.
Yeah, we all do
You
what we
know.
can.
Yeah. There's no like fancy backgrounds in Instagram or anything. So I can't have a goat with me or anything. So
A
this
goat?
is
Did you say a goat?
a goat. Yeah, this is a conversation for another time. It's a thing on Zoom apparently.
Yeah.
Anyways, for those of you who just joined us, I'm Martin Frager. I am a volunteer at Listen for a Change. And today we're talking with Pendle, Faith Marshall-Hall, who actually I'll let you give your own intro to the people who just joined.
Yeah, sure. I'm Pendle Faith Marshall-Hallmark,
Hallmark.
and all good. I am a climate campaigner with Amazon Watch, which is an environmental advocacy organization based here in Oakland, California. And we are really focused on protecting the Amazon rainforest by working hand in hand with Indigenous partners on the ground there. So we're sort of led by the philosophy, the idea that Indigenous folks are the best protectors of the Amazon rainforest, and the Amazon is an important biome to protect, not just because it holds 1/3 of the planet's biodiversity, but because it's a huge carbon sink. So it's protecting our entire planet from kind of reaching this potential global collapse
Yeah.
through the destruction of the entire planet. So yeah, happy to talk more about the Amazon, but I should say I'm pretty new to this position, and I've done a lot of other things before coming to Amazon Watch. And yeah, so right now in my work, we focus mostly on targeting the major financial institutions that are financing the industries that are destroying the Amazon. And so I can talk more about that in a little bit if we want
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
but that's sort of the rundown of what I do at Amazon Watch.
Very
Yeah.
cool. Well, so you kind of talked about, what you've done and how you got here. So let's talk a little bit about that, about the beginnings of Pendle. How did you first get interested in climate work and in the kind of work that you're doing today?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I have always been really interested in social justice work and in human rights. And I think that for a long time I had this sort of misconception that climate work and environmental advocacy was really just about the birds and the bees and not in the traditional sense, just about like protecting the animals and the plants. And I didn't really get kind of the social justice angle of it. And sort of in kind of all the work that I've done previously, and I can talk about that in a second, I've sort of come to realize that environmental justice is really in order to prevent the destruction of the planet and to protect the planet, we have to dismantle, systems, a lot of other systems that kind of go hand in hand with it, like the patriarchy, like white supremacy, like this sort of constant drive for profit and over people. And so those are things that I've kind of come to realize over the course of my work previously. And so I guess I could kind of say that the way that I got into environmental justice work and into what I'm doing with Amazon Watch now is I did a lot of like community organizing work in Philadelphia, where I lived for a while, and was working with undocumented folks and with refugees, and kind of thinking about the relationship between kind of the U.S. foreign policy that was sort of pushing a lot of people to migrate, and started thinking about issues of migration and human rights. And then I was drawn to work as an international human rights accompanier in Colombia, and that basically means so international human rights accompaniment is a tactic that's been used all over the world for really since the 1980s, and it's basically it's a tactic that's used by activists living in conflict zones who are trying to protect themselves from being the targets of violence. And so international human rights accompaniment involves having foreigners come to a place that's experiencing a conflict and physically accompany activists there. And it's a way of drawing attention to the issue, drawing the attention of international authorities, of the press, of embassies, and of physically protecting people in the moment. So and that's sort of complicated. I think we can talk more about that if folks are interested. But basically, through that work, I was accompanying human rights activists in Colombia who were being displaced from their lands by right-wing paramilitary groups, by the Colombian government itself. And a lot of these groups were being, there are really strong ties between kind of the right-wing government in Colombia and for-profit companies that were trying to kick people off of land in order to do things like mining or like agribusiness. And a number of other things. So I started seeing like close up communities that were being affected by this drive for profit by a lot of international or multinational companies that were coming into Colombia and wanted to use its resources in order to make a profit, but were destroying the land and displacing people from their territory. And so that's kind of how I got introduced to this issue, and sort of saw how climate change and human rights were really closely linked, and started working with people who were seeing kind of, I think you call them frontline communities, but people who are seeing the direct effects of climate change. I'm talking about people who are living in areas that have been really completely destroyed by open top mining pits, and a lot of these are owned by, there's one example, Murray Energy is based in the US, but they have a lot of operations in Colombia, and coal mining. It's open top coal mining, and basically it destroys the earth, and it becomes really toxic for people to breathe in that air. So people were dying of cancer. The people who normally fished at the ports, all the fish were dying. The coal was sort of polluting the water and polluting people's access to the air and the water, and they were no longer able to fish or to grow their own food anymore. So just, I think for me, seeing that up close and seeing exactly how a lot of these companies are totally destroying the communities where they're doing business, and getting away with it is really what introduced me to this work, to environmental justice work.
Yeah, wow, you quite a path you've been on. But no, that's great. That's it's yeah, like one of the things that you know seems really, you know, kind of in this time relevant, you know, and kind of to our conversation, that you do a lot of on the ground like work with people. Like, you know, so much of environmental justice work is getting to know people, is seeing, you know, what they're living through, but also like hearing from their stories. And I think like, you know, I mean, from my experience, it's been a lot of, you know, activism and like getting together and, you know, kind of building, you know, community, but also like a lot of that is, you know, you have to be in person to do that. And now
Right.
we're living in this moment where we can't do that. You can't travel to a place and see the devastation. You can't, you know, get together and have a protest like you traditionally would. You can't, you know, have an action. So thinking about the work that, you know, Amazon Watch does, you know, of talking with people and, you know, of being there and having them come over, you know, I don't know the specifics, but, you know, how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected the organization and affected the work that you do? Has it a lot? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it hasn't
Yeah.
much, but I assume it has because it's, you know, it's affecting everyone in some shape or form.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, I can talk a little bit about that. Like I mentioned, I'm pretty new to this position. I've only been here for really a few months, but I think a lot of sort of the some of the major projects that we've been working on included Earth Day, which was 2 weeks ago. And hopefully some of y'all tuned in to Earth Day Live, which was kind of a global online event that replaced the Earth Day climate strikes that were being planned by young people all over the world. Um, but yeah, for that event, I mean, that's a perfect example, is that we had been planning on bringing indigenous leaders from communities that were being impacted by crude oil extraction or by large scale agribusiness in the Amazon, and bringing them directly um, to New York City, which is where the headquarters of a lot of these big financial companies are based. And it was going to be this really amazing event. We are going to have, you know, possibly thousands of people out in the streets, you know, not just giving a platform to the indigenous folks we were talking with, but also allowing and organizing, coordinating opportunities for leaders from different fights around the world to meet and be in community with one another, and possibly talk on some panels, sort of identify some of the big trends. So yeah, it is really hard to to organize when you're not in person, and I think we've really had to pivot. And one example of that is the live stream that we ended up doing. And so it's not, I mean, it sort of has brought up an interesting question for me about like what organizing can look like in the future, because I think a lot of us are seeing that we're able to actually reach more people when we digitize things. You know, when we go online, you know, we had I think around 3 million people tune in to our live stream on Earth Day over the course of the 3 days. And you know, a protest, even if it was really, really cool and we
Yeah,
got a lot of attention, like
yeah,
I don't think we were going to be able to fit 3 million people, you know, outside of BlackRock's offices. BlackRock is a major financial institution that we target because they're invested in a lot of these bad companies that are destroying the Amazon. So I think there's this kind of give and take that we're noticing between putting stuff online and maybe we're able to kind of send our message out to more people, but or being in person, which I think is like maybe personally more moving for people, and is a really, can be possibly more impactful than something experienced online.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Yeah, because
Yeah.
now we're all doing online. Everything has to be online. I mean, you can't have
Yeah.
in-person meetings or anything, which is kind of crazy. But I'm glad that, I mean, I tuned in a little bit, Earth Day, Earth 3 days. So that was, because I was looking forward to the climate march, and being out there with people, like hearing people's stories. But yeah, you can't do any of that stuff. Um,
Right.
but I wanted to hear about, kind of you were talking about, working with people down in the Amazon, who are seeing their homes and their backyards and the environment that they've lived in, or that they want to live in, or that they like depend on being destroyed. And so, given that climate issues are already so intersectional. We've got environmental injustice. There's the wealthy are less affected than the like low income communities in some areas. Um, COVID-19 is also, disturbing communities across the country and across the world in different ways, right? And so, have you seen the the issues that you're working on now, like, exacerbated by the pandemic? Has it affected the partners
Absolutely.
that you work with, like down, in the Amazon? Could you talk about that?
Yeah, yeah, totally. That's a question that we get a lot in a lot of the online organizing that we're doing these days. Yeah, it's absolutely a huge threat. The threat of COVID-19. It's actually being thought of as a potential genocide threat because, and there's a long history, right? Like indigenous peoples have been in this area for hundreds, possibly thousands of years, and there's a long history of outsiders bringing disease, bringing death, that wipes out entire peoples. And so we're definitely seeing that threat right now in the Amazon. And there's a really inadequate response on the part of a lot of Amazonian governments. There's not sufficient supplies, there are not sufficient uh, healthcare resources being given to folks. And really, people are being left to fend for themselves. So it's been really alarming. Like one of the communities that we work with some leaders there is the Quechua community of Sarayaku in Ecuador. And actually, a few weeks back, they had a monumental flood. They'd never seen a flood at that scale before, and they were saying this is an example of climate change, right? So they're directly being affected by climate change, and then on top of that, they're in territory that's been invaded by oil extraction companies. So they're trying to fend off these oil companies. They're dealing with these unprecedented floods, and now they're trying to keep outsiders out of their territories because they're afraid of getting COVID-19. And so actually, Amazon Watch has been really trying to and amplify are able to coordinate a unified statement in solidarity with Indigenous folks all over the Amazon, basically calling for an immediate end to any kind of extractive activity on or near their territories for the duration of the COVID-19 pandemic. Because, as long as these companies are continuing to operate, they're still sending people into their territories. We're using. So It's a really, really precarious situation. And we're doing what we can as Amazon Watch to try to get resources to people, to try to get, face masks, soap, get people food, because really the most basic needs are not being met right now. And like I said, this all has a very historical context, right? And people are really concerned about what might happen in the Amazon. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's crazy. I can't imagine like having to, already fight for, something that sounds so basic as like the right to live, you know, like without the fear of like getting cancer or, getting killed by, long-term or like short-term like pollution, and having, a global pandemic without any resources, especially from like the government, to help.
Right.
So, um, well, that's a lot. I also, I kind of want to pivot a little bit. Um, you know, uh, there's a lot of, you know, I mean, with reason, there's a lot of negativity. The pandemic, has had a lot of negative effects. I don't think there's any major positive effects. Like people are dying. This is serious. This is like
Yeah.
really affecting people. Um, but either you, the organization, but maybe you, like, is there anything that you've taken from this moment that has become positive? Even like, I don't know, like, are you cooking more, walking more, talking to family more? You know, I think like in a way, all of us are learning to adapt. And in this way of adapting, we've learned new things about ourselves or new things about the people that we know or love. And I know, I wonder, for me, for example, like I've gotten to know my neighborhood so much more. I go on walks, I go on long walks now, and things, like my partner and I would have never thought of walking around and, exploring the parks. Like we found this park 15 blocks away from our house. We're like, oh my God, this is so nice. There's a coffee shop there. It's hidden. There's no one there. We would have never, ever walked around as much as we do now. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering, if any of those things have come up for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess there's kind of two levels there, right? There's like on the professional level, it's sort of what I was saying earlier. It's gotten me thinking more about how we might be able to incorporate more digital organizing into our work in the future, like how we might be able to sort of put more stuff online so that it's more accessible to people and we can actually amplify our message for more people. Um, so and I think you and I were talking about this actually like a week or so ago, but it is a really cool time for us to kind of be educating people and be like sharing information. Okay, we can't come and be in the same physical space, but we can definitely, do a webinar, we can have a talk, or we can do stuff like this, and we're sort of spreading our messages in ways that maybe we weren't able to previously or we didn't think of. And then on the personal level, I think this is definitely like opened up a lot more opportunities for me to connect with people that maybe I haven't been able to talk with on such a frequent basis previously. And, I have a group of friends that have started, I have a couple groups of friends that have started meeting on a weekly basis. And these are people that I absolutely love. And, before it was kind of just, we call each other, we'll talk maybe every few weeks or so. And now having like this really intentional space where all of us are coming together and we're able to be not just one-on-one conversations, but actually like in a group, and kind of being more intentional about our interactions has been really, really cool. And then for me, I also, I think it's also been really interesting, just kind of, like I said, I'm new to the neighborhood. And I just moved out to the East Bay, from the East Coast. And so for me, it's been kind of overwhelming, like how beautiful it is outside. Like it's like, I was just talking about this with somebody recently, like there's roses in bloom right now. And like on the East Coast, at least where I'm from Rochester, New York, we're not going to have roses until like June. So, yeah, it's just kind of ridiculous. I'll be walking around, there's like flowers and cactus and colors everywhere, and I feel kind of spoiled. And um, yeah, just I've started doing this thing where I try to take pictures of just like funky little things that I notice in my neighborhood or like on my
Yeah,
walks that I would never have noticed before.
yeah,
One thing that's really cool that my block does, not my block actually, but a few blocks away, they do like a cacerolazo every night at 7 o'clock, where you basically take out your pots and pans at 7 o'clock, and it's sort of like this like Latin American protest style that has been used in
interesting.
a lot of countries, where like people come outside and bang on pots and pans, and it's like a way of showing your discontent with the current administration. So I just think that's really funny, just like feeling like finding new ways of noticing your community, even when you can't like go and sit at a cafe and people watch in that way. You can still go out and kind of see see what there is to see.
Yeah,
um so yeah,
yeah,
that's been cool for me.
yeah. We're all adapting, and like trying to make it work for us in our own ways. But yeah, no, this neighbor. I mean, like to people who are watching, Pendle and I live like 10 blocks away, so like the neighborhood is great. It's so beautiful. There's so many nice things to see around here. So I totally agree. Um,
Everyone be jealous.
I know everyone would be jealous. East Bay forever. No, 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 no. We're not taking sides here. San Francisco's great. Oakland's great. South Bay's great. But okay, so so it's a tough time for everyone. I think like we're stuck at home, lots of and we're away from our loved ones. I think that's a big one. In this time. Um, but even though we're alone, we're also together. We're all united in a way.
Together apart.
Together, exactly, together apart. So who I like to know if you have who has been your greatest source of support in this time. I think you talked about your friends, but I don't know if there's a specific person or yeah, I love to hear.
Yeah. Well, I think some of them have been like bombing the chat. So, but yeah, I just think like uh, that's hard to say, because I really do feel like I have like really really great friends who I go to for like different things. But I'd say probably my oldest friends, people that I've known for some of them as long as 20 to 25 years. And it's been really incredible to like have people that have seen you through like all these different phases of your life, and seen you, you know, through thick and thin. I mean, I guess I'll just, that sounds so corny, but yeah, I'd say like probably my oldest friends are the ones that I'm like most grateful for right now. Yeah.
That's
Um,
nice. Yeah.
yeah.
It's good to have. It's good to have that as some sort of support system, especially like people you've known your whole life who've seen you change and you've seen them change, and that's great.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting near the end of our time. I just have two more questions that
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on your answer. So I mean, in a way, you've already kind of talked about this, but I want to see if you had any other thoughts. You know, I mean, this crisis isn't over per se. We don't know when it's going to end. But do you have like a big lesson that you think you're in the process of learning, or you've already learned from this, whether it's personally or work wise, or I don't know what the third category would be, but
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of pressure out there right now for people to be using this time productively, like you are supposed to like finally produce that podcast you've always been wanting to produce, or you are
yeah,
supposed to lose 5 pounds, or I don't know, learn a new language. And while all of that stuff is super cool, I think if you have the energy to do it, like go for it. Um, but I think this is definitely highlighting a lot of the stuff that was already not working in our society. And uh, I'm hopeful that it's going to start a lot of really important conversations that maybe have always been simmering, but are really going to kind of reach a boiling point at this point. We're going to realize, we need to provide healthcare for people. We need to provide social security for people in a way that's going to enable them to live their lives sustainably. And we need to take care of one another in a way that we really haven't been up to this point. So I'm hopeful that this will influence a generation of young people to really think more collectively and try to be taking care of one another in ways that maybe they haven't previously, or haven't thought previously. And then I also think like this is about just being present, like being aware of what your day looks like, just pausing and kind of practicing gratitude for what there is. And I don't know, I think it's really interesting. I was actually talking with my grandmother a little while ago, and she grew up in the Great Depression, and she was saying, I think we're gonna have another Great Depression after this. People are gonna be really in desperate situations. They already are. And she it was weird, and hearing that as a young person, that's like really alarming to hear. And she was just like, like I think there was actually some good that came out of it. And I was kind of like, what do you mean? Like, she's like, well, people really took care of each other. I feel like I knew my neighbors. I actually like knew who they were as people. They weren't just people she said, they weren't just people I brought banana pudding to when they moved into a new house. Like they were actually people that I cared about, that I relied on. And so my grandma thinks that this will be good for all of us in some ways. And I'm hopeful in the same way.
Yeah.
So.
There's hope. There's hope.
There is hope.
There's hope. uh, yeah, no, that's wise words from you and from your grandma.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we're a little over time. I don't want to take any more time of your evening, but last question, which
Okay.
you haven't seen, but here's the question. I think you kind of talked about that a little bit, like about other people, how they're like seeing different things, and maybe we'll think about things differently. When was the last time you changed your mind about something?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Keep the last one. Keep that for the end.
I'm sort of, I hope this isn't like a lame answer, but I've sort of been, I haven't completely changed my mind, but I've started leaning towards maybe becoming vegan. And I don't know a lot of vegans, but just, yeah, I'm starting to learn more about that, and kind of thinking, oh gosh, maybe this is like a cool thing that I can do that I think might have a positive impact. Whereas previously, I think I kind of like turned my nose up at it. It's like, oh, only crazy people are vegans. No offense.
That's what they all say until they become vegan.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's like something that I'm thinking about. What about you? I'm curious what your answer would be to that.
Changed my mind about something. Oh boy. I don't know. That's a tough one. I should have known that this would come back towards me, and I should have thought of it. Um, uh,
Make it a good one.
this is also going to sound like silly. I know I don't want to sound vain with this answer, but it's honest, and honesty is important, right? I've been trying to stay healthy and work out in my own way. And even though now I've taken a break because I injured myself from overuse, I
No.
started. No, it's fine. I'm okay. But I started like consuming protein shakes, like protein powder, which I always thought was a silly thing to do. You know, like I was like, you don't need that.
You've
And so
become one
like,
of those people.
yeah, well, no, it's like, it's like the vegan thing. I always thought it's like crazy people who did that until I started doing it. And it's like really nice. I'm like, this is great. Like my muscles feel better. I feel stronger. It tastes like chocolate, so it's delicious. And so like, I totally changed my mind on it. And the best thing is, I think, is that it's my brother who's had protein shakes for a while, who got me into it. Like he's always been an advocate for them. He tries to stay really fit. I'm taking the brand that he takes. Like he really guided me through it, and that was really helpful. And I think that really helped me get over like my mental, block that this is like a thing for crazy people. Like my brother does it. I mean, in a way, he's crazy, but like maybe I'm crazy too.
Yeah,
So
it's
yeah,
all
so it's like
good.
it's all good. I changed my mind. I'm like, this is great. I love this. New lifestyle.
It's about
Yeah,
accepting you're crazy. It's
exactly.
just
Accepting
taking on
crazy,
that
accepting my
mantle.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, so that's it. There you go.
Nice.
Pendle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you
It
for
was a
having me.
pleasure talking with you, and hearing from you and learning from you. Um, and I also want to thank all our listeners, all our viewers who tuned in tonight. Hello. We're
Hi.
doing these listen lives every Wednesday at 9 time TBD, but every Wednesday on the Listen for a Change Instagram page. I won't be hosting them every week. Obviously, we have a series of hosts who you will get to know. So tune in next week. It's going to be great. And Pendle, thanks again so much. If you want to check out Pendle's work, you can look at Amazon Watch on Instagram, on Facebook, on social, on Google.
All
They're
the
doing
things.
amazing work. And yeah, that's I think I'm gonna wrap it up. So
All
did you
right.
have
Thanks for
anything else to
tuning
say?
in. No, I just really appreciate the space. Yeah.
Great. Have a good night.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye. Goodbye, everyone.